Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts.
Let's make a playlist.
First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing.
Let's make a playlist.
You gotta kick it off with a killer to grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you gotta cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
No rules here. This is Let's Make a Playlist with Jonathan Howe.
Hey everybody, it's Jonathan Howe here for Let's Make a Playlist. Welcome to episode 2 of this first season of the show. And I hope everybody enjoyed that debut episode with Anthony Botting of The Cocktails and A Book for Wanderers. I had a blast chatting with him. So far, I've had a lot of fun with all the interviews that I've done so far. Some great ones coming down the line. Today's one is a fun one for me as well because it's with a guy who I had a chance to work on some music with, and that music has seen the light of day now. My band, Green, White, Checkered, we just put out our first EP. It's called The First One, aptly named. Streaming on all platforms, soon to be up on Bandcamp as well. Now, Vince, it must have been like an Instagram. Somebody posted about it on Instagram that he was looking to book sessions in and around Hamilton. And I was like, you know what, this guy, I've heard his name. I've heard a lot of the stuff that he's done, and I'm just going to reach out and see about working on a project. And it worked out really well that we had a chance to get into the studio together and finish up 3 tracks that I've had kicking around for a very long time, which eventually became Green, White, Checkered's The First One EP. And I thought everything sounds great. He really did a great job executing my vision. I said I wanted something kind of garagey sounding. I didn't want a super clean produced rock record. I wanted to have it as pure and as raw as I possibly could have it. And it worked out pretty well, I would say. Overall, great conversation coming up with Vince. As for me, you can follow the show and follow me at Jonathan On Air. Green, White, Checkered, again, that's the name of the band that I play in. We just had our first EP release party as well at No-Tell Cocktail. Shout out to everybody who came out for that one. It was a blast. And we just announced another show, November 9th at the Warehouse Concert Hall in St. Catharines. That's where you'll be able to catch up with the band in November. Taking the month of October off as I'm getting married. Busy time. Podcast is still going to roll through, though. I've got some episodes in the bank for the time that I'm away and wrapped up with the all the marriage stuff and honeymoon and all that sort of stuff. So, again, at Jonathan On Air, that's where you can check out me. Check out the Patreon. We've got full-length episodes. What does a full-length episode mean? It means you get a desert island record list from each of the guests. They're going to name off their 5, maybe 10, depends, somewhere in between. Those records that they just can't live without, that if they're going out to a desert island and they don't know when they're going to be rescued or whatever, if they can have these records, they can make it through kind of thing, you know? Now, I also ended last week's episode off by drawing a song out of the hat for my own personal playlist. We're going to skip that at the end, and I'm just going to bump it right up to the second spot for this one. I'm going to reach into my bag here. And track 2 on my own personal season 1 playlist. It's going to be a song featuring your favorite singer or vocal performance. Singer, vocal performance. That is a good one for me to try to answer and try to get to the bottom too. A song featuring your favorite singer or vocal performance. I think I'm going to go with Where the Streets Have No Name, U2. I think that's going to be my pick. I find Bono's vocals on that one still really incredible to this day. I think they just hold up really, really well. And Bono is one of my favorite singers, if not my favorite just straight up singer. Shouldn't do anything else in the band. Sometimes he plays guitar. Nobody really wants to hear Bono play guitar. So I'm going to pick Where the Streets Have No Name for that one. With all that said, check out the Patreon. Like I say, Let's Make a Playlist. We're still building that up over time here. You can check out me on the socials at Jonathan On Air. That's where you can keep up with me and everything that I'm getting up to at Green, White, Checkered Band on all the places for social media as well for the band. And Let's Make a Playlist rolls on with the producer of my first EP and a guy that I had a blast chatting with. And I think one of my favorite playlists so far that I've seen, it's Vince Soliveri on Let's Make a Playlist. And And my guest this week on Let's Make a Playlist with me, Jonathan Howe, it's Vince Soliveri. Vince is a very talented engineer, producer, mixer, master. You do pretty much everything on top of being an actual musician as well, Vince.
Yeah, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, and I'm a master of a couple, but not all of them. Definitely not all of them.
I mean, there's only so much time in a day to master all of those things, but the stuff that I've had the chance to have you work on and work with you on, you definitely mastered it, and it's awesome, and your output is really diverse as well. I mean, I think what attracted me to working with you when I was starting to prep some of the songs that I wanted to put out was obviously your work with like the Dirty Nil and a lot of like heavier and hardcore bands and hardcore projects throughout Southern Ontario. But you have a diverse catalog of music that you've worked on. Let's start with, what was your background? Did you start as a musician, or did you develop your musical chops after being more on the engineering side?
Yeah, so I started playing music very young. I think it was in like third grade when I started taking guitar lessons. And I always tell the story because I think it's really funny. Like my brother, who's 4 years older than me, who is also a musician still to this day, he plays in a band called Red Hill Valleys. Shout out Red Hill Valleys. He started playing drums, and so he was going to lessons and doing stuff. And I kind of was just like interested in it, but I wasn't really like sure. I was like kind of embarrassed that I wanted to do it. And my dad had a guitar at home, and one day I was just like noodling around with it, and then my brother came down and caught me. I'm like, oh shit. And then he like one day like outed me to my dad, just been like, hey dad, Vince wants to play guitar. And I thought he was gonna be like mad at me or just like trying to like discourage me. And he just like had the opposite reaction. He's just like, cool, do you want to take lessons? And I'm like, I'm allowed. And I was just like, I couldn't believe that I was like granted the opportunity to do this. So yeah, I started playing. I guess that was like literally 20 years ago, which is insane to say. And I always did it kind of casually, and then I started playing like punk bands in high school and stuff like that. And we all were not very good, but that didn't very fun. And, that was kind of when I just like had definitely an interest in playing music live, but I never thought of it ever as like a career pathway or something that I wanted to do. But I remember like getting an iMac as a family computer when I was young and playing around with GarageBand, and I was like elementary school at the time. For some reason, I'm like, I kind of get this. Like I saw a graphic EQ and I was just like, oh, that's like the EQ on a guitar amp. Like I get it. And it kind of felt like I was drawn more to kind of like that technical side of music. So when it came to like graduating high school, like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I'm like, I cracked a version of Cubase and I kind of understand it. Maybe I'll school for this. And then I did. And, school is what you make of it. And it was fine. I don't know. It was an okay experience. But I kind of just, stuck with it for enough time that I think only in the last few years, I feel like is kind of, I've reaped the rewards of grinding it out in my parents' basement for however long in my jam space and all that.
Yeah, it is one of those things where it's not an overnight success, let alone overnight just learning everything and getting to a point, right? It truly is, of all the things that I've had the chance to do, music and in particular engineering and production is truly like a 10,000 hour science, right? Like I'm sure if you went back and listened to like the first tracks you ever worked on compared to the stuff you're working on now, you'd be like hanging your head in shame. But back then you're like, this is so cool. I recorded a full band or whatever, right?
It's funny because I have a hard drive like right next to my computer that has every session that I've ever worked on from when I started, which I guess was around 2014. And every once in a while, just for nostalgia's sake, I'll go and just like check out things, and like stuff that I did in the first like year of recording and mixing is pretty good. The year or two after, really bad. And I had this regression, which was funny. And when I think back to it, it's because when I first started out, I was just like, I kind of just want to like, I wanted to sound this way. I didn't really think. I just like wanted to create the sound that I heard in my head. And then the more I started listening to things or in learning things and like getting to the nitty gritty of the technicalities of it, I started thinking about it way more. And I feel like it killed my like success in creating anything sounding good because I was just, my brain was in it too much and I wasn't making any like the right moves. And I honestly feel like that was like, it took way longer to unlearn that than it took to learn how an EQ works or compressor works, and I feel like, yeah, so many people are just in their heads, and I'm just like, mixing and recording and all that shit. It's no different than playing guitar or like learning how to, shoot hoops or something like that. Like there's no magic to it. You just gotta like figure out the fundamentals, apply those fundamentals to who you are, and just go.
Yeah, it's just about getting reps, right? And it's so interesting that you say that, that you had that period of regression, because I almost felt the same way after going to music school, where I learned so many rules about how to build a song, how to structure melody, counter melody, all that sort of stuff, which I was literally just going to music school to try to figure out how to be in a punk band. And I
Yeah,
sometimes I think like, it's like great that I have all this knowledge about scales and Mixolydian and whatever else. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I almost feel like the real world experience of sitting in my bedroom and just tinkering for 2 years would have been not as useful, but useful in a different way. So I definitely understand that feeling of how you almost have to unlearn the
yeah,
amount of knowledge that you have to get back to that core distilled thing that you're good at doing. One of the things I wanted to ask, because you are somebody that works in a lot of different genres, is how the genre of an artist or a band and the songs that they're bringing to you change how you approach a session, from production, mixing, mastering, all that sort of stuff. Do you find that it changes your process at all, whether you're working on like a country song, like, or something that's heavier?
yes and no. I think 10 years into doing this, I, at least for my own kind of like system of how I approach things, I learned like what works and what doesn't. That kind of like trial and error process of my career path is kind of like, I wouldn't say it's completely gone, but like it's definitely I spend 10% of my time doing trial and error. The 90% of the time is kind of like, just executing what I know. So at this point, I've distilled my process down to like, a few narrow steps. So I think the difference between genre, the difference between band or whatever it is, I think a lot of the times comes down to the band itself. And back to like that period of regression that I was talking about before, back then I felt like it was really important. Like every band that comes into the studio needs to play to a click, and you have to edit drums to a grid, and you have to do all of this and like kind of like, do all the proper things. And, as an audio engineer or producer, make sure whatever you want to call this fake job that we have, uh, uh, you know, you don't get to choose who walks through the studio doors. Yeah, I'm very privileged. I get to work with a lot of people that I know and that I'm friends with and that are very talented. But, at the same time, like I might be friends with that dude, but I don't know how tight he can play drums. So at the end of the day, I feel like I spend a lot of time just assessing the band. And if they have past work, I'll analyze their past work and be like, what's cool about it? What doesn't work? How can we, make things better? So like some bands thrive playing to a click. That's how they practice, at their jam space with in-ear monitors and all that. And other bands have never played to a metronome at all. So I'm like, I feel like it's my responsibility to take that into consideration. Be like, if I'm trying to capture the essence of what this band is, I feel like I should meld to what they do and how they naturally perform. So, for a lot of like kind of like hardcore bands or punk bands and whatnot, like that music doesn't really sound, at least to my ears, doesn't really sound great, like gridded and perfect and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I'll approach those with more of a live off the floor type session, especially at the studio that I work at. Shout out Boxcar Recording in Hamilton, Ontario, a best studio in the world.
Great
Um,
spot.
big room. There's lots of like literal like space around you that you can, get a lot of isolation and whatnot. So you can get away with doing some live off the floor stuff and still get some isolation, and you can still multi-track and this and that. And then other bands come in and they're like a metalcore band and everything needs to be gridded because that's just the sound. But at the end of the day, I feel like, especially in rock music, the sound that people want to hear at the end of the day, like, is sort of established already. Like there isn't very many modern rock or metal punk records or whatever that like sonically are like, whoa, this is brand new uncharted territory. Most of the time, you're kind of like, you're trying to achieve what the standard is at that time. So whatever genre that I'm working on, I kind of just think about like, what's this band? What are they trying to achieve? And how do I just push it in that direction? And sometimes as the session continues, those answers kind of reveal themselves, of just like whatever, if it's a drum sound that they want or a guitar sound that they want, like musicians gravitate towards certain things or reject other things, and you kind of just like follow the path. And as like the producer, it's my job to kind of make sure that everything like, falls in line and that things are kind of, don't go too off the rails, because we only have 2 days to record 6 songs or whatever. So it's like I kind of got to like keep everybody in check. But at the end of the day, the fun of it to me is kind of like treating every session a little bit differently. Mixing is different. Mixing, I feel like I'm way more just have like kind of like the template that I follow. But even then, it's a template. The tracks are routed the same, but the EQ moves and the compression and all the whatever, all that stuff, it always changes. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the biggest distinction, is like you should always have methods of how you do something, but that doesn't mean that you're doing the same thing every time. You know what I mean? All those methods are just guidance.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great way to look at it too, because it's not that it's formulaic, but we know there's a science to audio engineering. You're working with sound waves. Like, there's only so many ways you can manipulate that wave and change things to produce the product that you're going for. You know what's going to sound good and what's not going to sound good. I feel like I have to ask this question because I have an uncle who's a really big audiophile, loves his vinyl, loves, when I was at Metalworks studying music and having some classes in audio engineering, he'd always be like coming up with, what's this mean? What's that mean? Like, always ask me questions, and I'm like, dude, I'm not paying attention enough to actually answer these questions for you. I always told him, I'm like, the reason your record player doesn't sound right is your room, first and foremost. Start with your room and then figure your stuff out from there. But for anybody out there who's not super into, maybe they're a music fan, but they don't know the technology side behind it. They don't know what goes into a session, how a live guitar track turns into the mixed and mastered version that they hear on a CD. What is the difference, as easy as you can explain it, between mixing and mastering?
The difference between mixing and mastering?
Yes.
Mixing is real, first off. Mastering, I don't know what those guys are doing. That's police art. No, mixing, I'll talk about recording because that's a necessary part in that entire chain. To me, recording is about capturing performances and capturing tones and building an arrangement. That's for the recording side. How you do that doesn't matter, up to you. Do whatever you got to do. Mixing is about taking everything that you recorded and literally just mixing it down to one stereo file that's what you listen to. That's what the final thing that everybody is going to hear. And that's just, taking your kick drum and your snare drum and your overheads and your bass guitar and your rhythm guitar and all that, and balancing them out and using EQ to carve space in the frequency spectrum, and using compression to even out dynamics, and using saturation to make things sound warm or whatever. And literally just making the song, as you're listening to it, feel consistent. You know what I mean? It's very rarely it's just like faders up, nothing moves. There's automation.
Mm-hmm.
Things get quieter in the verse, they get bigger in the chorus. That's where mixing comes in. You make those decisions of like, how is this song actually gonna like live as it plays for 3 minutes? You know what I mean? But at the end of the mixing process, that sums down to a stereo track, left and right, and everything, all the magic that you did from the recording and mixing process comes down to this, just 2 files, left and right, and then when you send it to a mastering engineer, the mastering engineer might do nothing. Or the mastering engineer, might hear problems in the mix and be like, okay, there's, it's lacking this specific frequency. So we're adding a little bit of 200 hertz to make it sound a little bit more full, a little bit more top end to make it shiny, and a little bit more low end to give it thumpy. And then at the end of the day, you're just limiting it to get it loud enough for Spotify or the radio or whatever, to kind of match the, I guess, industry standard of whatever that level is. I think the creative part of mastering that's important is if you're mixing, or rather mastering, like a full length or an EP or just a collection of songs that are all going to be on the same release, I think that's when mastering is most important, because kind of like I said before, when you're mixing, you're kind of just serving the song, serving the band, serving whatever is in front of you at that time. But if everything's coming together at the end, where these 12 songs are going to be on an LP and they're going to all live together forever, a mastering engineer is going to make sure that from song 1 to song 12, they all kind of sound similar in their EQ curve, and they're all going to have similar dynamics, just so, when one song jumps to the next, you're not like, what is this? Like, the listener doesn't feel jarred by it. So the mastering engineer kind of evens out the quirks between each song, brings a level up to kind of an industry standard, and then just kind of finalizes it. And then each format that it goes to, CD, vinyl, streaming, they all have their own like technical specifications that need to be adhered to. So the mastering engineer will also make sure that it matches those specifications. But that's what they say they do. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. And I'm not digging mastering engineers at all, because I do mastering myself. But it's the only part of the process in which 99% of the people who receive their masters can't tell the difference between the final mix and the master. Myself included.
I literally am taking the tracks that you have from the first mixes you gave me to the master, and I'm gonna play them both for my uncle and see if he can even tell the difference, and just be like, yeah, what do you hear? What's different? Which one's the master version? And just to mess with him and see. So
I'd be curious. I can even point them out if you played them back to back in a blind test.
I mean, I was listening and I was like, if I think about this too hard and try to listen to this too hard, I'm going to annoy myself. So I'm just going to listen to them. Like I said, nope, they sound great. Vince did a great job. Good to go. So those will be released to the world, and everybody can hear Green White Checkered's first 3 songs that were produced and engineered by Vince here. But we're not an audio engineering podcast. We are a music podcast. In particular, we focus on songs and making a playlist. Before we get into this little game I've got here, Vince, when was the last time you made somebody either a mixtape, CD, or just a playlist on your favorite streamer for somebody or for yourself?
So I don't know if this is this is probably the last one that I made, where I actually planned it out and dedicated it. In our first year of dating, my partner, her birthday was coming up, and I was figuring out, what to get her. And one of the things we always bonded on, and still to this day do, was music. I feel like in the first year of us dating, there were Blink-182 was I feel like the first band that we were just like, holy shit, we both love this band, even though we come from 2 totally different worlds. Especially at that time, it started from there, and then other music came in that we talked about and bonded over, and I'd show her things, she showed me things. I have a real good, almost not photographic memory, but I'm really good with the timeline of things in my memory. So I'm just remember the first time that we hung out, we were at her apartment and we were listening to Braid, that emo band from the 90s. And I remember that the one album just playing on repeat the entire night. Just that was the very first one. And then I kind of thought about what was the next song that we talked about? Oh yeah, we bonded on Weezer. And then I just suddenly there are 12, 14, 15 songs later, I was just oh, these are all the songs that we kind of bonded over over the last year leading up to her birthday. So I made a playlist and borrowed a tape dubber and actually made a cassette tape. And then I was so proud of myself. We still have it. I look at it all the time. This is so sick. I made this J card cover and made a collage of her cats and stuff like that, and I gave that to her for her birthday. And I remember that being I'm not much of a gift giver. That gift fucking rocked. That was a good
That's
gift.
A good one. That's a good gift. That's really thought out.
I kind of wish I did it every year, but then I kind of lost track, and then we got way too into Machine Gun Kelly over the pandemic that I'm this year's playlist wouldn't be very good.
So new pop punk Machine Gun Kelly, or old school more rap stuff Machine Gun Kelly?
No, when Tickets to My Downfall came out, we were very. It was the pandemic. What can you say? I don't know what else was there to listen to.
Yeah, no, that was one of the better pop punk releases that we got over the pandemic.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna make a playlist tonight here on the show, and the way this works is I've got 60 or so song superlatives that, for lack of a better term, that I call. I'm going to draw them out of this trusty upside down David Bowie Vans hat that I've got on my desk here. And whatever song comes to mind as an answer to the question, that is what's going on the playlist. And we'll see. The first time I did this, the order actually turned out pretty good. Like, I'm pretty sure, I think it was Anthony from the Cocktails was the first episode we did. And he got whatever song he picked first ended up being Green Day's Burnout, which was track 1 from Dookie. So he actually got to put a track 1 as his track 1 on the playlist, but we'll see how yours turn out here.
Yeah,
get
I'm
them all
not
on
very
the
good
hat.
thinking on my feet, so this might be the worst episode you've ever done.
I don't think it'll be that bad. Don't worry here. All right, I'm going to draw one out. First track on Vince Soliveri's playlist is going to be song featuring your favorite drummer or drum performance.
Okay, I knew this was gonna happen, so I'm just gonna give myself the clear now. I'm gonna say things that I believe to be the true answer at this moment, and 45 minutes from now, I could have a completely different answer and probably being like, shit, I forgot about that one, and then I'm gonna regret it. So I'm just gonna give you stuff that comes to the top of my mind. I play drums, and my like gold standard for drumming, especially in rock music, is Dave Grohl.
Oh, okay.
He's the GOAT. I truly believe that he is the greatest rock drummer ever. You know, it's just like Bonham, him, and I can't even think of like a modern guy. Maybe like Eloy Casagrande is the guy who plays with Slipknot now.
Yeah.
Like that dude is like the best guy in the world right now. But like between Bonham and him, it's Dave Grohl, and I feel like Dave Grohl is the best drummer in the world. The Color and Shape is an incredible record, and I know Dave played drums on that. So whenever I'm like practicing drums, my go-to song to jam to is what's the track? I'm gonna look at I'm gonna look at my phone a lot because I need to actually remember what the song is called.
That's fine because I'm with you, or sometimes it's like right on the tip of my tongue where I can hear it before I can see the name of the song. So
like I said, it's
feel
like
free.
I'm the worst on my feet. Wind up,
Oh,
off, shape
good pick.
is like, I love playing drums to that song, and it's like I'm a big fan of like heavy hitters. Obviously, Dave is like one of the best heavy hitters in the world.
Yeah.
But it's just so driving and so rocking, and it's basically a hardcore song, but with singing. Like it has a guitar riff in it that sounds like Turnstile. Like it's such a good song. I feel like the drum performance on that, I wouldn't say that the parts are like super flashy or anything like that, but I just feel like when I listen to that song on my headphones loud, it feels like I'm in the room with the band, and it's sort of like the driving force for it for me.
They're really well recorded. I mean, not to bring it back to the recording engineering of it all, but for whatever reason on that particular album, the drum sound is fantastic. And Wind Up's a great example of where it feels like there's a lot of like space. Like it feels like they captured the room with Dave's performance really well on that particular track, especially.
Yeah, and I forgot what studio they did. I think it's a studio in Seattle, and it was like the drum room was like made out of like marble or something like that, or some like ridiculous like reflective surface that the main drum room was recorded in, and you can definitely hear it. And just like his fills are so like brain dead simple, like, and like every hit is like as hard as possible. It sounds like a drum machine because he's so consistent with his playing. It's just so aggressive, so heavy, but still so kind of like just like fun to listen to. The drum performance on that and on that entire record, honestly, is like unmatched. So, like, I love Taylor. I think some of the Foo Fighters' best work was with Taylor on drums, but I can't get past how perfect of a drum record The Color and Shape is.
Yeah, no with you on that one.
No compression on those drums, believe it or not.
Really? You know what? That almost makes sense with how breathy they are. I could see that actually.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of the mixer going into detail of how he mixed those drums, and it kind of blew me away.
All right, let's go with track number 2. This one might take some thinking about because it's maybe the hardest one for me personally if I had to answer this one. And it's sports intro song. So like either your walk-up song for baseball, your walkout song for wrestling. I don't know what your go-to in terms of sports entertainment, but what song would be like your walkout anthem if you had to have one?
This is my go-to for sports entertainment, Jonathan.
Yeah, there it is. I love it.
I mean,
All right, so yeah,
I want to say the glass break, the Stone Cold Steve Austin glass break, but I'm gonna go with a real song. I feel like I've thought about this a lot, and I never have come to a great conclusion. I feel like if first off, the walkout song that Metallica has always done, like the Ecstasy of Gold or whatever it's called, it kind of
yes,
sounds like westerny. I
yeah.
feel like that walkout song is like the coolest thing a band could ever walk out to, especially a band like Metallica. If I was a wrestler, I don't think that would be my choice. I'm gonna answer this question from the perspective of me being a wrestler.
I like it.
Yeah, I feel like I was thinking about this the other day and something came to my mind. Part of me always felt like it would always be funny to walk out to Minor Threat by Minor Threat. 'Cause it starts
Ooh,
with that guitar riff, and I
yeah.
think it's really cool. But I feel like I was a wrestler, like would that hype the crowd up enough? I'm a big CM Punk fan, so I feel like it's very. I think of my entrance theme and I think of Straight Edge. I feel like all in the same category. Yeah, I don't know. I might refer to my phone quickly
Go
because I
for it.
feel like there's something that I've saved that has been a good
The
walkout.
Minor Threat pick is interesting because it is one of those like deeper cuts where like the Punk fans in the audience will lose their mind when they hear it and be like, I can't believe this is what he's walking out to. But to the rest of the people, they're just like, oh, this is like a heavy song, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know because I make a lot of music. I'm like, would my entrance song be something that I created? But I feel like that's kind of
I mean, you could plug some
egotistical.
stuff. I mean,
I would, but all the stuff that I've created is not online right now, so that's not going to be good for me.
fair. That's fair. It's exclusive.
Okay. I'm gonna stick with the Minor Threat train, but I want to see if there's another Minor Threat song that would actually be a better entrance song. It's a toss up between Minor Threat by Minor Threat or In My Eyes by Minor Threat.
Ooh, In My Eyes is a good pick too.
Yeah.
All right, you got to narrow it down to one. What's your
I'm
go-to?
gonna narrow it down to one. I'm gonna do In My Eyes because I just like that song better,
Yep.
and I feel like it encapsulates the straight edge ethos very well.
Nice. Yeah, I love like I'm not a big wrestling guy, but I do love that with CM Punk and just in general, it feels like there's more than a few tie-ins with different wrestlers in the punk community, and I can appreciate that, right? Like, isn't there there's a female wrestler that's got like a Ruby Soho type name. I can't remember her name right now. Is it? I can't remember it.
Oh, interesting. I wonder. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of in AEW, a lot of wrestlers that kind of hover around like the punk and hardcore world. Yeah, CM Punk and WWE is probably like the main one that everybody thinks of.
All right, let's go on to song number 3 on the playlist here. After In My Eyes, Minor Threat is your sports walk-up. I'm going to need now song by a band you've never gotten to see live.
Just a song.
Yeah,
Fun.
any song by a band that you've never had the chance to see live. Like for me, I never got to see the Hips, so that's always what I give as an example, and people are always shocked that I've never seen the Tragically Hip.
Right. There's a few bands that like I regret never being able to see when they were still around. Hamilton Hardcore Legends, Left for Dead. I never
yep.
opportunity to see. They played like a reunion gig in Hamilton when I was in high school, and like a chump, I decided to stay home and study for my exam the next morning. Big regret, huge regret. Should have never done that. Crazy hardcore band from the early 2010s called Hoax. I feel like were such an experience to see, and when all my friends were going to like Not Dead Yet in Toronto when we were in high school once again. Sheltered home life, had never had the opportunity to see them. So that as a band that comes to mind, I really wish I could have seen. A few other bands come to mind, but like my favorite band in the world is Metallica, and I yet to see Metallica.
Oh wow, okay.
I need to make that happen eventually. So I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't choose a Metallica song.
All right, which one are you going for? What's the one that you're like, I wish just need to see this one live?
It's a toss up between two, either Disposable Heroes off Master Puppets or Dyer's Eve off Justice. I feel like as a live experience, I probably want to see Disposable Heroes more. So I'm going to go with that one.
Okay. All right. Disposable Heroes, Metallica, song number 3.
I'm going to try so hard to not pick the same artist more than once, but there's probably more than one Metallica pick on here.
That's fine. I never actually made any kind of rule where you had to pick like different artists for every time or anything. I was just thinking about that. I'm like, have I said that that's a rule? I don't think I've said that's a rule yet, but I maybe in like season 2 I might have to make that a rule.
Maybe as a playlist, I don't make playlists that often, but I like when it's just like, here's your shot at this artist, and then that's your only taste of that, on to the next thing.
Yeah, right. You don't want to oversaturate it with one particular band or one particular sound, for sure.
Exactly.
All right, question number 45 of the 60 potential. We've got a song from a band that you think everyone should listen to.
How do I plug a band that I'm in so I can make more?
I know you got lots of projects and lots of things that are on the go that you could pick for this. So
that's a great question. Because I like truly don't care about what other people listen to, nor do I care about like showing other people music that I like. I feel like music is a very like solitary kind of like, this is a me thing.
It's the ultimate subjective thing.
Yes, absolutely. But for the past like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I've listened to like almost exclusively country music, and I'm pretty convinced it's the best genre of music in the world.
Wow,
especially like
bold statement.
Modern pop country. I think it's you can't get better than that. You can't get catchier than that. You can't get better production than that. And I feel like people are so quick to shun country music for a myriad of reasons, and I reject that so much because I think it's so great. So I feel like when people let me indulge them and be like, yo, you got to check out this song, and it's a country song, I feel like getting people to check out like Dancing in the Country by Tyler Hubbard, I'm just like, listen to this song and tell me it's not a banger. Or Truck Bed by Hardy.
I don't think I've heard either.
You gotta listen to both those songs. They're incredible. Or Cruise by Florida Georgia Line is also incredible. Like, just songs
that one I know.
Like, you can't listen to and be like, this is a bad song. Like, you listen to it and just like, this song is like, whether I like the genre or not, is like a total banger. You can't, like, within 2 listens, it's stuck in your head for days.
That is true. I'll play that one at the racetrack on Saturday nights, in particular Florida Georgia Line, and everybody starts singing along. Everybody's happy. It suits the dirt track lifestyle that I don't necessarily participate in all the way, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, there's some country stuff out there I gotta give props to.
Yeah, so I don't know. Of those 2 tracks, I feel like, I don't know. Truck Bed by Hardy is such a fucking weird song. Like, people got to listen to that at least once.
All right, I'll go. We'll go Truck Bed by Hardy for your 4th track on the playlist. I like it. Let's draft another song out of the bucket here. I'm gonna pull one from the bottom here. Let's see what we got. Song from the 2010s.
And it's so broad. I feel like
I know.
Spend hours just thinking of every single song from the 2010s. I feel like
I know, right?
I got a song that comes to mind because I feel like it really encapsulates the 2010s, but I need to Google whether it's actually from.
Ooh. I love those crossover years, right? Where something drops in like 2009, but it doesn't really pick up steam until like 2010, and you're like, what do I really call that?
Okay, this is 2011, September 16th, 2011. Sexy and I Know It, LMFAO.
That is the perfect pick for this particular question. That is the perfect pick.
That like early 2010s Shutter Shade, Jersey Shore type culture, which I feel like is one of the best like pinnacles of MTV culture in the world. Like, when I hear that song, I just think about the 2010s. Like, later 2010s, I feel like that you could pull that into the 2020s maybe, but that is like, you can't think of anything but 2011 or 2012 or prom or whatever you were at that point in your life. Or, like it feels like.
Yeah, I was in, I think, grade 10 when that song would have come out. Maybe grade 11, I guess it was, if it was 2011. Either way, that was like right at the, like, I don't know if you experienced that too, where like all of a sudden, didn't EDM feel like it was the biggest thing And
Oh,
every
it
major pop track was like
was huge.
a techno song, but like still like you'd be Katy Perry or it'd be Lady Gaga, and
Yeah,
all of a sudden everybody's making those modern club classics, but you can also hear them on FM radio.
yeah, like the wub 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 era of like pop dubstep it felt like you couldn't escape it.
Yes.
Like just the Dead Mouse and the Skrillex of the world. Like, going back and listening to that music, it's so jarring. It's like almost unlistenable. And I don't mean that in the sense that it's like bad, but it's just like such aggressive sounds. It must have been like the first time that people heard the electric, like distorted guitar. Like that's
Yes.
what some of that shit sounded like. And so, yeah, the fact that that was like mainstream music at the time, I'm like, yeah, maybe we were a little bit more experimental back then than we are now. Like, it's
Well, it was
weird.
everything was about bass too. Like I remember every
Yeah.
single guy that had their own car in high school, you had to have a sub in the back, and you're like, oh, listen to how this song sounds with the bass, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
It was such a strange time, but I remember it very fondly as a kid that went from that into getting into dance music. So
Yeah. And like that, I don't know if you watched that movie Spring Breakers.
yes,
That I think Skrillex did the entire soundtrack for
I think
that
so.
movie. I remember seeing it in theaters at the time. And yeah, it just like, I feel like that if I had to pick a movie just of the 2010s, it would probably be Spring Breakers because I feel like that was such a perfect encapsulation of that entire culture in one
That and Project X,
movie.
that would be the other one I'd bring up.
Yes,
Project
Project X
X.
as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Not a reminiscing podcast at all here. I like
No.
it though. All right, let's go. This is track number 6 on the playlist, and it is a song featuring your favorite singer or vocal performance.
Funny because I don't really pay attention to the vocal in most music.
I
It's
don't
like
really
for me, it's
either.
like drums. I'm like constantly zoned in on the drums.
Well, you said Metallica's your favorite band, so is James Hetfield your favorite singer then, or do you have somebody that you prefer better on vocals?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if a person that comes to mind when it comes to like vocal performance. Like I feel like when I listen to this band, the vocals are maybe the thing that I'm drawn to the most is a band like Pearl Jam.
Ooh,
I love Pearl Jam. My mom and I like both equally love Pearl Jam. Like that's one of the bands that we've always bonded on. She's had such a big crush on Eddie Vedder, and I've also had a big crush on Eddie Vedder.
how do you not?
And he's a beautiful man in all his eras, but he has such an incredible, like soulful voice. But he can also like run the range of like screaming and like aggression to like kind of like sultry and like everything in between. Like I feel like everything that Eddie sings, especially in the early days, I think he has an amazing voice now, but like the 10 and verses and like Vitology, which I feel like are like such an incredible like triplet
Yeah,
releases. His vocal, like it feels like that guy was just like, and it kind of was the case. Like he just like was a young punk kid that was just pissed off and angry and just like felt like he needed to prove something to the world. And in those early recordings, you could hear it so well. Like there's just like amazing sense of urgency to everything that he did. And his lyrics are incredible, beyond incredible. One of the best lyricists in rock music by far. So it would have to be a Pearl Jam song. It would have to be from one of those records. What one is that it's gonna narrow it down to? Um, feel like I want to go with Rear View Mirror.
ooh, I like it.
I feel like, especially for a vocal performance, I feel like Eddie hits everything on that. Where he kind of starts off kind of like low and rumbly, and as the song progresses, his voice gets more energetic and more angry, and by the end of it, he's like screaming. Like it feels like this like complete and total cathartic build throughout the entire track. And every time I listen to it, I feel like I have goosebumps. So I'm gonna go with that one.
Good pick. I like that. And that's a great explanation too. Like when I think about that song, that build, I can always think of like Jimmy Page talking about how he builds guitar solos and guitar parts to like
Right.
crescendo, like you think of like a Stairway to Heaven or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's the perfect example of somebody doing it with their voice and using their voice to the fullest extent of it being an instrument. So
Yeah. Yeah. He's a real one. I've seen Pearl Jam a few times live, and it's just like, once again, every time I see a band, I'm like laser focused on the drummer. when I see Pearl Jam, I'm laser focused on Eddie every single time. He's such a captivating front person.
This one will be fun here for track 7 on your playlist. Song from a video game.
Dog. This is the greatest question you could ever ask me. And I'm going to cop out here, and I'm not going to say just a song from a video game. And you can't put this on a playlist. This doesn't exist anymore. So if you want a real song, I can give you one as well.
Okay, let's see what the first one is, though. I'm
just going to give the shout out to an entire game soundtrack. And
okay.
WCW NWO Revenge for Nintendo 64 straight up has the best music of any video game I've ever heard. It sounds like hardcore. It sounds like hardcore played through like computers. And there's an intro song, there's a main menu song, there's like 8 or 9 like arena songs, and then like a menu, like another menu song.
And they were all created specifically for the game?
Yeah, and they're all incredible. The riffs are so heavy and so chunky that like there's certain riffs. I've been a big fan of Turnstile for a long time, like early on, and when they blew up and like Glow On came out and they suddenly like just became like the biggest band in the world, I was kind of just like, people not making this connection, because I always thought Turnstile sounded like the music from WCW Revenge. And then I'm like, okay, millions of people are listening to this band. Maybe they'll make the connection too. I've never heard anybody make that connection of like Turnstile sounding like the music from that game. Listen to like the opening track off of Nonstop Feeling, and then listen to the menu music for WCW NWO Revenge. And it's the exact same fucking band. It's like on par. It's incredible. I just played through that game recently, and it's still like every single time, like, it's just such a fucking banger. Every single song is a banger. But if you want a real song, I can probably narrow it down.
All right, like, let me hear your real song.
I played a lot of Tony Hawk games growing up.
Nice.
So it'll probably be one from Tony Hawk Underground specifically. I played that game endlessly for hours and hours and hours on end. First time I ever heard No Effects was from that game, Separation of Church and Skate. And I feel like that was kind of a big deal for me when I was like 11 years old. But for a song on that game that to this day I really love, I think I can't pronounce the entire, it's like a whole sentence, the song name, but Millionaire by Queens of the Stone Age.
Oh, yeah.
Opening track off Songs for the Deaf.
Yeah.
I think that was on that game. And I remember just like skating around while that song was playing. I was just like, this is the most badass music in the world.
That was that era of Queens too. I feel like they were in every video game, because I knew No One Knows from NHL 2003. Like, I think they were in EA Sports games. Yes. They were in Tony Hawk, right? So I think that's a big part of, it was crazy how important it was. It was so important to be in those sports games with your songs back in like the early 2000s, right? Like that could literally make or break an album for some people.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Not to dwell too much on this, but there's, big band for myself growing up and into my adulthood was Every Time I Die, who I aforementioned, the Butcher from AEW. And they have a documentary for one of the records that they made, and they were making a song to be on a Madden game. They missed the deadline, and it was kind of a funny skit, but their manager, like one of the dudes was mimicking their manager, just being like, this is bigger than any radio placement. Like, think of like the millions of guys aged like 15 to 46 that are in the song. Like, this is the biggest thing that's ever going to happen to your band. And it was kind of like a joke. When I think about that sometimes, I'm like, yeah, way more people are going to hear a song off of like a 2K game than they're ever going to hear on like some random local radio station. No dig to the radio stations. I love radio, but like just the amount
don't have the same reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I play sports video games too, WWE specifically. And, I'm just like, even on like the newest WWE game, there's like hardcore bands like Speed on there and Turnstile and Military Gun. And like, these are bands that like are, I saw Military Gun play the Monarch Tavern in Toronto in like 2022. And now they're like on like a major 2K game. I'm like, that's crazy. I can only imagine what that does for the band. Now they're like headlining shows at like the Danforth and shit. So like, you know, obviously that band is great and destined for greatness, but I'm sure like video game placement ain't hurting.
No,
Yeah.
it definitely can help out. Track number 8 on the playlist is going to be, I was wondering when this one would come up. Your favorite dirty or horny song?
Dirty or horny song.
It could be a jokey one or a serious one. I feel like there's two different directions you can go with, right? Like Bloodhound Gang is like the easy choice,
Right.
obviously, right?
I
But
can't say I listen to a ton of horny music. You know, like I feel like Animal by Nickelback comes to mind off the top of my head, where I'm just like the first time I heard that song, it just felt slimy.
yes. Yeah.
And for that reason, you know, as much as I love Nickelback and I, you know, have a major respect, that song's too gross for me. But I feel like watching the video for Feeling This,
Ooh,
in '82, I was like, this is explicitly a song about sex. And at the
definitely.
time, I was like 8 years old, and I felt like it was risque for me to even be watching it. But I can't like shake the feeling of just like this is such like an aggressively horny song. But also like especially for a band like Blink-182, it's kind of done in a tasteful way. Not like, you know, the bonus songs off Tape Gosh Pants and Jacket, which are so horrendously like vile. It was a single. It was on the radio, but it was so explicitly about sex, and I was just like, you know, in hindsight, I'm just like, that band kind of did something special with that one. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna do that song.
I like that pick. And that is one that, like, I think anytime anybody thinks about a dirty song from Blink-182, like, there's so many options that come to mind. But you're right, like, that was, I think, like, the one of the first signs of maturity from Blink, where it was like, oh, you can be an adult about this topic that you have been singing about for 10 years of your career or whatever it was to that point.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
it was them growing up.
yeah. I'm to this day widely regard that album to be not only their best album, but probably the best rock album of, you know, the 2000s.
I
You
was
know,
just thinking about that today,
it's
actually.
flawless. It's such an incredible record. People hated it when it came out, and I just don't understand it. I loved it since day one. And like of all their music and of all the pop punk of that time, like that record is completely timeless. And the
Yeah.
production on it is incredible. The songwriting is great. Performances are immaculate. Like it's just a 10 out of 10 record. No shade to Travis Barker. Fallen Interlude doesn't need to be on it. Maybe get rid of that one. But even in, you know, in my maturity, I can appreciate that song as well. But yeah, that album's perfect.
Nice. And on the very opposite side of the spectrum, I've drawn your favorite love song.
I'm gonna harken back to, I might not pick this, but maybe I will. I don't know. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I had a project that our class needed to do about like we were learning about poems and stuff like that, so we had to pick a love song and write about it. I don't know why. I don't know why it had to be a love song, but we had to just pick one. And I was like I was a metalhead in like that time of my life. I was really big into Slipknot. Still am. I love Slipknot. But I was just like, I can't just pick like a sappy love song. I have to pick like a heavy song. And I remember being in my basement and like flipping through this very small stack of records that my dad had that like they weren't even his. He inherited them from a friend. And Black Sabbath Master Reality was in it. And I flipped over to the back and Sweet Leaf was on it. I started reading the lyrics to Sweet Leaf. I'm like, this is a love song. I should pick Sweet Leaf. And then I asked my dad, I'm like, Dad, do you think I could pick this for this project? And he's like, you should, but it's about weed. I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And I like kind of, then I like, it started to click. I'm like, oh, I can't pick this song. I'm going to get in trouble. But that was kind of funny. I am going to pick Sweet Leaf by Black Sabbath because I think it is a beautiful love song. And it taught me that love songs can be about anything.
Exactly. I like that. It's a great pick. That's too funny. All right, we got 3 tracks left to finish out your playlist, Vince. Let's see what else we got here. Out of the hat comes a song that you think is underrated.
And I don't know. It's funny because I have zero perception of what people like and what people don't like.
I know, right? This is a tricky question. I always say to like, I say it's similar to like that song of like you wish everybody could hear this particular song, right?
Right.
You know, I think there's a lot of artists that, you know, we listen to and sometimes I wonder why they're playing a venue that's 200 cap and not 20,000 cap or something like that, right?
Yeah. I feel like there's bands, and I might have to look at my phone for this one, but bands that come to mind that I feel like are so explicitly like a major influence on the entire like world of a certain genre, but no one truly like gives them credit for it. But like I listen to it and I'm just like, oh, this is the framework for everything that came after this. One band that comes in mind that I feel like I've always held near and dear to my heart is a hardcore band from Wilkes-Barre called Bad Seed. They have members of Title Fight in them, and they're like
That's why I know them.
long defunct. They put out like their final release in like 2009, and such a ridiculously good band, but also like their like album covers are like cartoon, like Chucky. It's so ridiculous. It's absurd the aesthetic that band shows. But I hear Bad Seed, and I'm just like, they're the best hardcore band of all time. There's everybody who's made hardcore since Bad Seed uses this as a framework, especially now where like big chuggy kind of like slow dumb riffs are like kind of like the thing that is popular. I'm just like, oh yeah, Bad Seed is the goat, like the North Star that everybody should be looking to. I'm like, this is the best thing. So because of that, I'm gonna pick Justice Deserved by Bad Seed.
Ooh.
Because I think it is, if you like hardcore and you don't know Bad Seed, you need to listen to this song and you need to listen to this album because it is just, it's the best one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, it was funny. As soon as you made the Title Fight connection, it started all coming back to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I know Bad Seed.
Yeah, and you know when Title Fight was like still around, like Bad Seed would play some of their shows and stuff like that. So they're not like a completely unknown band, but in my opinion, it feels like a band that is extremely overlooked and kind of forgotten about. Like they got just like swept up in, or swept under the rug rather when kind of Title Fight got really popular. I feel like yeah, that band has done no wrong.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the second last track for the playlist. A song for a rainy day.
For a rainy day. Feel like for some reason, whenever I listen to the album Pretty Odd by Panic at the Disco, I get emotional. I don't know why. I think it's because I was listening to it at a very specific time in my life in which I was emotional. So whenever I listen to it, it kind of reminds me of this like sad, gloomy version of myself that I don't miss, but at the same time feel lots of empathy for. I have to find the song title because one song specifically comes in mind.
Panic's one of those weird bands too, where they definitely started out in the emo world, but they quickly migrated into that pop crossover and kind of never looked back. But I always wonder, I'm like, are we gonna get like a 25th anniversary tour or something like that, where suddenly Panic's like a big emo band again for all of us?
Yeah, I always thought that too because my emo like phase was 10 years late from when everybody else got it. Like when Fall Out Boy was like the biggest band in the world, I hated them. I saw them on their final tour opening for Blink-182, and I remember just being like, I hate this band, they suck. and then for some reason, one day I woke up and had a Fall Out Boy song stuck in my head, and this was like in like 2016.
Yeah,
And
definitely late to the party.
yeah, very late to the party, extremely late to the party, so much so that it became like my defining like personality trait for a while, which I don't regret at all because I think they're an incredible band, but like I just started getting into that stuff very late around that time, like 2016, 2017, 2018 was like my emo phase. And I feel like with Panic at the Disco, everybody thinks Fever You Can't Sweat Out is like the best record that they ever put out. And like, it is really good. It's obviously really great. I hated Pretty Odd the first time that I heard it because I was just like, oh, this sounds like Beatles bullshit. I don't want that. I want stupid cabaret emo.
Yeah.
Stupid me, this album's incredible. It's amazing. I got to actually find the song. So give me a moment.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm seeing?
Do you know what I'm seeing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, every time I hear that song, it reminds me of my former sad self, and I get emotional. So I feel like if it's a rainy day, I would throw that on.
Nice.
But yeah, I know I saw Panic at the Disco in like 2018 or 2019, and at the time I was just like, this is the best show I've ever been to. So entertaining. Brendan Urie was such a firework on stage. But yeah, they didn't play any of the old stuff aside from 9 in the Afternoon and I Write Sins Not Tragedy. Aside from that, it was all like new pop stuff. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting that isn't like nostalgic for people.
Yeah, it's so weird. They're that one band that I feel like is such an enigma because of the way they transitioned through their career. And I feel like it's like they left certain amount of people behind and then they gained a whole bunch of new people. And then when you go to a show, it's like this weird mishmash of people. And it's like, is this your turn to go get a beer? Okay, I'm going to go get a beer for this one. You go get the next ones when they're playing the weird stuff, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they have some really great releases in their catalog, some really non-favorable ones as well. But I feel like what is great is like, aside from the nostalgia of the emo days, I'm just like, these are just great pop songs. Like you can't deny it. Like even from their later stuff, like Death of a Bachelor, I'm just like, this is it's a banger. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a great listen. It's a good time. Like it's hard to deny that.
Yeah, I was teaching guitar, I think, when that era of Panic came out. And I remember like all of the kids coming in to learn vocals. Like that was one of the tracks that they would bring in would be like Death of a Bachelor. Everybody wanted to learn to sing that one.
Right. Yeah. And it didn't even dawn on me how huge the band became. Like I just thought they were like, a couple rungs below Fall Out Boy. I'm like, nope, they're like in the top 20 of artists on Spotify in the world. I'm like, shit, that was a surprise to me.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. That their popularity is insane. So
Yeah.
they're I wouldn't mind an emo turn back though. I wouldn't mind like an old school Brendan Urie emo record. I write
Yeah,
Sins
well,
Not Tragedy style stuff.
Yeah, well, they have to reunite because I think he called the quits a few years ago.
Yeah, he did, right? And I don't
Yeah.
remember if they're one of those bands that sold their catalog too, maybe, I feel like, but
Yeah, I wonder. I respect it. He's like, I'm going to be a father. I don't want to be on tour. I quit.
Yeah.
I'm like, good for you. Like, that's great.
yeah, you made your money, you've done whatever you needed to do in your career. You feel
Yeah.
comfortable enough to walk away. Good on you.
Yeah, go be a kick-ass dad.
Yeah. All right. Final one to round out the playlist, Vince. It is a song with a female singer.
Song with female singer. Yeah, I mean, like, Paramore comes to mind.
Yeah.
This is a Paramore water bottle. Big Paramore fan. I'm not gonna be shy about that. So I feel like I want to pick a Paramore song, but I feel like that's too easy.
I mean,
And
is
so
it
I'm not
easy?
gonna pick a Paramore song. I'm not gonna pick a Paramore song because I want to give this to a band that, going back to the underrated thing, this was the other band that that came to mind. A band from Spain, I think, called Mourn.
Okay.
We're on I don't know if they're currently on the label, but for a while they were on that label Captured Tracks.
Yep.
And I feel like they had, a solid foundation or fan base over in Europe and maybe a little bit in North America. But I only heard about them because my partner had been a fan for a long time, and they came out with a record over the pandemic called Self-Worth. And she was just like listening to it in the kitchen while she was cooking one day, and I was just like, what's this? This sounds incredible. And I feel like that a record, Self-Worth, is one of the best modern rock, emo, post-hardcore. I don't even know what you'd call it. Like, I feel like that entire album expands like genres. Like, I feel like they can do everything. And they're a band that I feel like I've tried to like tell people about. Like, you gotta listen to this record. It's so good. It's one of the reasons why I don't try and share music with other people, because I feel like either you're not listening to me or you're listening to this and you don't hear how incredible it is. So what's the point of me even telling you? I just gave up because I feel like this record, it just didn't click with other people when I told them about it, and I didn't get it because I thought it was incredible. So I'm going to pick a song off that record. I'm going to have to see which one that I actually want.
Yeah, go for it.
Because it's like multi-vocalists, both of the guitar players share vocals. So I want to find which one has my favorite. Might have to listen to them.
No worries.
Just like going through on Spotify and just like skimming through these songs just to remind myself of which one's which. Like, this record's fucking incredible.
The point of this show is that, you know what, maybe if people aren't the people in your life aren't listening to your recommendations, maybe somebody listening in, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, if we can somehow create that kind of reach, we'll pick it up.
It's such a good record that I really don't even care which one I pick because they're all so good. But I'm gonna choose Call You Back.
Call You Back?
The second song on that record, just because it's not the first. I feel like it's a cop out to just pick the first one, so I'm gonna pick the second one.
Nice. Make it more.
But it's also a song that, like, if we're talking about vocals, it just has like great melody to it, and I feel like it's such a catchy record in the same way that it has like some super weird, like angular sounding riffs that kind of like they sound very post-hardcore, like almost like close to At the Drive-In. They just like, I don't understand how they created this record, but it's such a fucking masterpiece front to back. It's incredible.
Awesome. Like it. I like that. A lot of the stuff on this list is stuff that I need to check out or go back and listen to because it's been a while since I've heard it. Let's go over your entire playlist. From track 1, we got Wind Up, Foo Fighters. Track number 2, In My Eyes, Minor Threat. Disposable Heroes, Metallica. Trek Bed, Hardy. Sexy and I Know It, LMFAO. Rearview Mirror, Pearl Jam. Millionaire, Queens of the Stone Age. Feeling This, Blink-182. Sweet Leaf, Black Sabbath. Track 10, Justice Deserved, Bad Seed. Do You Know What I'm Seeing? Panic at the Disco. And track 12, to finish it out, Call You Back by Mourn. Vince, we made it through the gauntlet, and I think we picked a pretty good playlist.
Honestly, when you read it back, I'm just like, I'd listen to this playlist. I'm an album guy. I don't really listen to playlists that much. I hear that, and I'm just like, yeah, it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, you could definitely put that on a mix CD or a playlist and drive an hour somewhere and be pretty content with what you got on there, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, With that said, Vince, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being a part of Season 1 of Let's Make a Playlist. I can't wait to work with you again on some more music down the line. Can't wait to see you at a show sometime because I know you're always jumping in playing with different bands. And let's make sure maybe we'll do this again. We'll give you like a specific topic to make a playlist about sometime.
That sounds great. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Check out VinceSoliveri.com, right? That's where your website is. That's where your people can find the information about your production work.
Yeah, I think that's it. I wouldn't have made it anything else, so let's go with that one.
I think that's what it is. I was reading some of the stuff you've been involved with before it, so check out VinceSoliveri.com, and if you want to hear an example of his work, you can check out my band, Green White Checkered, which I think by the time this podcast drops, they're going to hear those streaming wherever you get your music streamed, plus a whole bunch of other artists and projects that Vince has been a part of. Thanks again, Vince, for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's Make a Playlist is a podcast hosted and created by me, Jonathan Howe, for House Media. At Jonathan On Air is where you can find clips of the show as well as all things me, JONATHON. That's how you spell Jonathan for the record. Please rate, review, subscribe, like all episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support the show, consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/Let's Make a Playlist. There you can find exclusive content, longer episodes, and sign up to receive our end of season zine. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends, and we'll be back with more playlists.